I think ultimately going from pregnancy to now, it's really just been this embracing change as it comes and kind of almost like rolling with the punches in a way of you can plan for everything every which way. And I did. And I have read all the books and thought I did all the right things and thought I knew exactly how my pregnancy and my labor and my postpartum were going to go. I had it all to a T. And a lot of it went as planned. But then there was a good chunk of it, pretty much everything after the birth, that was like, oh, I did not plan for or expect any of this to happen. And so that's kind of been a big theme for me is some of these changes I can't resist.
Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, let me welcome everybody back for the second time because Care forgot to hit record and we did half the birth story and now we're coming back. So we had Kyle last week. Kyle is back again. Hi, Kyle.
Hello.
And we're bringing Becca here to talk about her birth story, which now I'm excited because I've already had a sneak peek. So now you guys get it. It's so typical of me to do something like that. So I apologize. And Becca's okay with the second take. So we're going to do it that way.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to wheel you back to before you came into class. Let me take you back there. There's a doula in town, Kaitlyn, that I had been working with. She chatted my class and you guys happened to be friends. And you were newly pregnant and she connected us somehow. So let's start from our first contact. Like when and how did that happen and where did we get started?
Yeah. So first time I reached out was pretty early in my pregnancy. I want to say probably somewhere around like the 8-week mark, probably pretty early. And I was like, should I take the birth class next week or like what?
No, slow it down.
My friend Kaitlyn, who's a wonderful doula in San Diego, her and I had talked a lot about kind of my early anxieties of pregnancy. And she was my kind of sounding board for all of those anxieties and just questions that I had in those first weeks of finding out that I was pregnant after having experienced a loss a few years prior. And she kind of told me, she's like, I think you should reach out to Care. I've been working with her a little bit and I think we'll just have some really good insight for you, if not words of wisdom, anything like that. And I was like, okay, cool. And
because I'm like 100 apparently to you guys. I'm like the old wise woman when I'm like not that old, but apparently I am. That's okay. You just aged me. Oh, look at that cute baby. Hi, buddy. If you guys are on YouTube, you get to see how cute he is. Grace is really cute.
Yeah. So I reached out to you and I was just kind of expressed some of my anxieties and this is what I'm struggling with. I'm interested in your classes, that kind of thing. And you had sent me this really beautiful message about loving this baby where I'm at right now in the pregnancy and making sure that I give as much love to this baby in this pregnancy as I can now, no matter what. Can't control the future, can't change the past. And what's important is loving him now, whether that's for another week or for the rest of his life. And that was a really important perspective for me to help ground me in the pregnancy and to help really keep me present with it. Because that's what I was really struggling with was it was all about what had happened in the past. It was all about what could possibly happen in the future, hypothetically, which, hypotheticals didn't even matter. And I was having a really hard time connecting with baby and connecting with my pregnancy. And so you telling me that was just really helpful. And it really helped keep me grounded in this pregnancy. And I think it will carry me through future pregnancies as well, because it was important. And I know I've shared that kind of knowledge with other women who are pregnant as well, because I do think that's important, staying present, and babies know that, they feel it, they need it, and all the love we can give them.
And what we don't give babies credit for is if they're here for 3 weeks, that was their experience. They needed to be here for 3 weeks. If they're here for 6 months, if they're here for 24 years, right? We're coming to this planet for whatever lessons and contracts and love that we have to share. And coming from having 6 miscarriages and not connecting with Finley at all the first 6-7 months of the pregnancy, because I was so worried every time I peed, there was going to be blood. Every time I had a hiccup, anything going on inside my body, is that her leaving? We are so scared of loss that we don't learn to love.
Absolutely.
And what we're baking our baby in is what they're carrying with them for the rest of their life. So our decision is, as an adult who has control over that decision, am I going to make the investment to love every single day, every single hour, so that if and when this baby decides, hey, I'm going to stay this time, like everything's working, I feel like this is my time. Like they know their astrological sign way better than we do, right? They know their timing. They decide to stay. We've invested at risk to ourselves of losing the love and the concern and the care and the safety that they needed to come into the planet like that, right? Because if they're holding all of our fears and worries, they don't think the world is a safe place. They're probably second guessing whether they picked the right parents. Like, oh, you guys are a basket case. What the heck? There's going to be a lot of therapy in this household. But it is a very risky thing to love, even though there could be loss. And
Yes.
if we're going to put words to that, we feel that way with just a relationship.
Absolutely.
But when we can transpose it into a body that we're carrying in our physical body, it is worth it to take the time and worth the risk of our heart getting broken to love that baby, because it's our first act of kindness and love and selflessness for this new baby to do that.
Yeah. And I think that was something I like knew, I had read it in all the books, all the things, but I like needed to hear it from a real person. And, that
a really
was
old
it.
person, an old person.
No, but it was awesome. It was super helpful. And I'm so grateful that Kaitlyn had introduced me to you. And a couple weeks, I think, after I reached out to you, I was visiting Kaitlyn in San Diego, and she was shadowing your class at that time. And I saw like an hour or something of one of the classes from the whole program, and I was just sold. I was like, this is it. This is the class I want to do. I loved everything you had to say.
I love that you were a voyeur for my class. I love that.
It was funny. I was like sitting in the background while she was watching it, and she was like, you can watch if you want. And I was like, cool. And I watched, and I was like, this is the best. It was the class where you talk about like how to poop. So that was my introduction.
Class 3, how to poop. Yep. Wow, that's a great class to start in on.
And I was like, this is great. I was like, I love that, you're talking about all these things. And I love seeing how like engaging everything was, in the way that whenever you guys saw a video or talked about something, you asked for feedback from both parties and the couples, and, everyone got to talk. Everyone got to share their insight, their experience, their questions. And so I was like, oh, this is virtual, but everybody is very involved. So I was, really excited about that too.
Yeah, it's a blessing to be able to teach virtually, right?
Yeah.
I would love to go back to in person, but with Finley's disabilities, it makes it a little tricky. So good. I'm glad you liked the class. I'm glad you came. Honestly, after talking to you so early, because I talk to people early all the time, right? Sometimes I hear from them again. Sometimes it's after they've had the baby, but then you followed through and you're like, what day do I need to be in order to have enough time to practice and get my husband in there? Lie to get my husband in there, to tell him it's a one-time 3-hour class, which I think is great. Whatever gets him in, right? That's why the first night he was like, you are effing kidding me. And I've had many women do that. So it's not just you that has done that. So just so you know. Yeah, it's a common trick. But come on, how can you birth a baby in a 3-hour class? It's not, there's no way. There's too much information.
Yeah, way too much information.
So you come into class all excited. You guys get really close in class. I had said that in last week's episode, watching you two get closer and closer every week, and the conversations and the tidbits you would share were in a deeper connection space. So from your perspective, when you guys started having those down and dirty conversations about things that made you really uncomfortable in your relationship, which, you took my advice in our pre-call, I think, about that. Mm-hmm. Tell me from your perspective, like how that shifted things for you guys.
Yeah. So in that pre-call before class started, I think you just kind of gently mentioned, this is the time to get everything on the table, the good, the bad, the ugly. And listening to that, we were kind of like, okay, we can do that. And Kyle and I have been in couples therapy for years, just maintenance type stuff, and making sure we always have good communication. And if anything comes up, we always have a way to kind of solve through that. So we thought we were good. We're like, this is great. Like, we're on a good track. We're already there. We're good.
We're already there because there's never anything in our relationship we have to work on. We're good.
Right?
Check it
Yeah.
off the list.
Yeah, we thought. And then a few days after we had that pre-call with you, something came up, whether, it was argument, a disagreement, something like that. And we were like, oh, like this is what she was talking about. This is whatever conflict had happened. There was something deeper to it. There was something underlying, something that had been going on for much longer than either of us had acknowledged up until that point. And we were kind of like, this is what she meant by getting it all on the table. We need to really dig deep into this, be honest about how we both feel about it and kind of how we need to move forward. That conversation we knew was going to lead into a multitude of other ones. And so we were like, let's take some time over this next month and really dig into these conversations and have patience with each other, give each other grace, but also be able to listen to each other and be vulnerable and be honest. And so that was hard. I think that was the first time we've been together for 3 years at that point. That's probably the first time in our relationship that we were like, okay, like we're going to be honest, and it might hurt the other person's feeling. It might not feel good to say, but we have to kind of do that. And so we did. And that really all came from that, just you mentioning that in that pre-call conversation. And, we thought we were on the same page with everything. And we really were logistically, but having those harder conversations really helped prepare us to, I think, to be parents and to have harder conversations together that evolve around our son. And really just in pregnancy, being able to better understand each other and that kind of thing. So it was very huge for us. It was very pivotal in our relationship. I've said it to a couple of people that we've been in therapy for so long, and then it just took a phone call with you to be like, oh, okay, this is what needs to change.
Sorry. I dig deeper. And I can only say that because I've had 35, 40 years of therapy. So I get it. And it's always that little, because we just aren't honest. We're so afraid to be hurt, to have loss, to make things uncomfortable. And it's the uncomfortable parts that give us our potential for growth.
Yes,
like, man, comfort is toxic, and it's so great and it's so toxic.
It is. We kind of just were like, we have to do all this now. We have to have these conversations. And in retrospect, the first few weeks of my son's life have been pretty hectic. Just figuring out all sorts of stuff, lactation, tongue ties, all sorts of things that just really took our attention and our time. And so in retrospect, I am really grateful that we had those conversations when we did, because I cannot imagine doing them now postpartum. I can't imagine them doing them amongst the conversations we've been having about our son and decisions we've had to make. And now we're just on a much better path of communication. We can have these conversations quickly, efficiently, and we feel comfortable being honest and vulnerable with each other in a way that we didn't before. So,
yeah, it's so hard when you're overtired to do it. And that's when it's going to come up. So it's much better to have the grounding of, oh, I still love you. I'm just really overtired. Back off. Let's talk about this later, because that makes a huge difference in postpartum and parenting forever. Because once that baby's involved, guys, you're never alone again. There's always a baby in the shadows. It's just how it works. So now we've got Kyle back in the picture. If you're on YouTube, you get to see that, or Spotify, you get to see that. All right. So let's start with how labor started. You guys decided to do a home birth, but not at your place. We're going to do it someplace else. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when we found out that we were pregnant, we were living in a fifth wheel trailer on a good friend of ours' property. It was a decision we had made to move there, live on a farm. It was great. We loved it. But finding out that we were pregnant and also wanting a home birth of sorts kind of wasn't the best fit to do so in a trailer. So I started my search for midwives and just seeing what some of my options were. And I remember when I told Kyle that I was pregnant, that was like one of the first things I said was, I was like, how am I going to have a home birth in a trailer? And Kyle was like, well, other things to figure out, but we'll get there.
Who said you have to be in the trailer? You're on a farm. You could be outside. Yeah. Like, you're confining yourself to a trailer. Girl, look at this land. We could just do it outside. It's fine.
And it could have just been outside. Yeah, so I really wanted to do a birthing center. Nevada doesn't have them. So just kind of started my search on midwives. I ended up finding a wonderful midwives, two midwives in Reno, Jackie Burgess and her Casey, who's a student on her team. They were just amazing. And what I really was drawn to is Jackie told me that she opens her home to births for her clients. And I just thought that was so unique and really cool and easier for her and kind of best of both worlds for us. And we were located pretty far outside of Reno, about an hour outside of Reno, and the hospitals where we lived just weren't good. So I was just thinking, in the case of a transfer, I didn't really want to be in the town that we were in. The hospital does not have a good reputation. So being able to do the home birth at Jackie's in the city, closer to the better hospitals, just gave me a lot of peace of mind, and being in her home environment and all of that. So that was a decision that we made. Our birth started on August 31st and early afternoon.
I like how you say it started on August 31st, meaning it's going to be a 12-month cycle, but we started on, like, it sounds like you're preparing us for, okay, it's a 12-day birth. We started on the 31st. We ended last week.
Yeah, no, we started on the 31st, ended on the 1st. But spoiler alert.
Okay, good. Okay. So spoiler alert. It's not 200 years. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Started on a Saturday. And yeah, like early afternoon, having some small contractions. I had some bloody show and for a few days prior, so a little bit of bleeding that I was kind of nervous about, wasn't sure what was normal, what wasn't. Of course, texting pictures to my midwives, and they were like, everything's normal, this is fine. And I was like, it's not. So he made the decision to go to the midwives to get checked. Told Kyle that they wanted me to get checked, but I wanted to get checked.
Those little white lies, man. They show up when they show up. I want to drive an hour just to calm myself down. He's not going to be on board for that. So there's going to be a little white lie to get me there. That's so funny.
Yes. So
she knew that the conversation was going to go, have you talked to Casey and Jackie about it? Which she had, which she was told that it was normal. And I would have said, absolutely not.
So we went, it was an hour drive, and we got there. Jackie meets us at the door. She's got chili on the stove. She's happy as a clam. She's like, ready for you guys, all the things. And she checked me, and I think I was 2 centimeters at the time. So she was kind of like, yes, some steady contractions here, but you can have a baby tomorrow.
Early
you can
labor.
have a baby in a week. So yeah. And I knew that. And I knew that from the class. And that was always one thing about the birth process. And I was like, it's so unknown. Early labor could be a couple hours, could be a couple days. And so I was like, I guess I just have to ride this wave. And so Jackie had told us, she was like, you guys can stay and see how this kind of progresses and see, you'll be here and great, that'll be awesome. Or you can go home, hang out, and come back whenever you feel like this is a little bit more progressed. Kyle wanted to stay, and he was like, it makes sense to stay. Like, there's food here. Let's hang out. She has a beautiful house too. So we were like,
there's food here.
Babies.
There's food here.
Babies come at night. So let's wait until 10:30. Let's see if this thing kicks off. If it doesn't kick off, no worries. No harm, no foul. We'll go home, get a good night's rest, and then see where it goes the next time. It's like,
and we would have had hot chili that's on the stove.
And we would have hot chili.
Wife.
But instead, we had In-N-Out that made both of us sick.
Not great. That was not a good. I don't recommend In-N-Out before you go into labor.
So you decided to go home and have In-N-Out on the way out of town.
Yes, we went home and got home, took a shower, laid down, and pretty much immediately.
We get home at 8:30.
Yeah.
She gets settled. She gets in the shower at 9. She goes to bed at 9:15. She's like, I'm going to try and get some sleep. Okay, no worries. And at 9:30, hey, I need help. This is really intense.
Starting.
So,
it's nighttime, just like Kyle said.
Which is funny because I've always said that, like, to everyone. I'm like, babies come at night. Babies come at night.
I learned that from her.
And then Kyle says it to me, and I'm like, absolutely not. No
not.
chance. There's no chance this baby's coming at night. Yeah, so we packed up our things again and headed off that way. Our doula met us there.
Oh, no. There's way more fun in between
9:30
and when we actually left.
What was the fun in between?
So the reason that I was like, let's stay at the midwives when we were there is because there wasn't ever really a set something that would trigger us to go to Reno. It was anywhere from, hey, if you guys think, to contractions are 5 to 7 minutes, which her early labors were at 7 minutes. And that was, again, kind of why I thought we were going. But so when we go home and she's like, oh, these are super intense, it went from 7 to 5 to 3 like that. And
quickly,
I was like, oh my God, I'm going to deliver this baby on the highway. I know, I've seen it in Kara's class. Like, I know what to, they did it in an Uber, I'll be fine.
I show car births on purpose. Yep. You have seen car births.
So So that was kind of what I thought what was happening, because it went from like I had seen her having those early labor contractions for the past day, and then these real ones where it's like, oh, this is happening. So I called Casey, and Casey was in the midst of sleep, as she should have been. And I was like, hey, we're at about 5 minutes. There's a couple have touched 3. The longest one's been 8. She's like, you're 8 minutes from where? And I'm like, all right. Hey, can you wake up? I need to know if I need to leave. And she goes, well, you're calling me, so probably. And I go, okay, probably is good enough for me. Becca, get up. Let's go. And then her contractions went down to a minute when we were getting in. And I'm like calling the doula. I was like, hey, look, we need to hurry because it's further along than I'd prepared for. And she's like, oh, okay. So she zooms on over, and then she sees me, she sees her, she's like, we need to go right now. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm aware. And
An hour away.
And so I'm like trying to drive in the middle of the night. I have my stopwatch going, finding contractions, and I was like, all right, cool, they're at 3 minutes. And then we get there, and I was proud of myself. I only hit one bump during a contraction.
That's pretty good, because we talk about speed bumps, so that's pretty good.
Yep.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and boy, was I made aware that I had done it from her.
It was noticeable.
Yeah.
But
we get there, and we pull up, and Jackie, the midwife's house that you're at, standing out front, and Becca's like having contractions so quickly that it takes us like 5 minutes to get her out of the van, and then we walk up, and then the midwife goes, all right, I'll see you guys in the morning. And we're like, excuse me? This is happening now. It wasn't.
typical midwife, man. There's nothing to worry about until there's something to worry about. So you guys go have your labor and call me if you need me.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And in retrospect, it makes so much sense. And I think also that was a big, for me, understanding the importance of still having a doula while having a midwife, because that midwife's job is not to be there and support throughout all of that stuff, because they have to be ready for kind of the big step. So having the doula there, because there was a point somewhere in my pregnancy where I was like, oh, before I don't need a doula. And then I was really grateful that I did choose to have a doula, because it was a total game changer. She totally changed my birth.
Yeah, choose one that you like to get along with, for sure.
Oh yeah, she's amazing. So we get in there, and our doula is like, we need to get some rest, get some sleep. And so we laid down, got some sleep, and contractions started to slow down a little bit at that point, and got a little bit of sleep in between them from like 1 o'clock till 4 in the morning. And then about 4 in the morning started to pick up again, to the point where I couldn't quite sleep through all of them. Things started moving around again, and got into the tub. And that's where I first started to feel like, okay, this is happening. Like, we're in it. We're not going back at this point. And so we called Casey, the midwife who was leading the birth. We called her around 6:30 in the morning. She got there at 7:30. And yeah, and then she was there. She was super calm. She was like, this is great. Yeah, obviously she's fresh and ready to go. And
because she went back to sleep, because she knows early labor, we never know if it's 3 minutes or 2 hours or 2 days, right? Midwives, man, they have to preserve their energy for real.
They do. And I totally understand why, especially seeing how everything happened in those last few hours and whatnot. But yeah, so we were just in the pool, and that was what was really slowing my progress down. I wasn't really making any progress in the pool. We were just kind of hanging out. I was happy to be warm and comfortable. And
mind you, when she says this, that also means that when we called the other midwife at 6:30 in the morning, Jackie, the head, came in, checked her, and you're complete. It's like, what does that mean? She goes, you're past 10 centimeters. I'm like, oh, we're having a baby now. And nope, it was not yet.
No urge to push, nothing. And it was just, that's when we kind of decided, let's get out of the pool. Let's see if we can make some things happen on the bed. Did some of like the side lying releases. I remember falling in and out of sleep in that as well. But those were super painful, not fun.
They're not comfortable, especially when you're in labor.
Yeah, no.
And being in the pool where it takes all the pressure off and you just feel comfortable, to full gravity on the side with that leg. Oh yeah, it's intense. That's intense.
Yes.
but they move things.
It does. And that was kind of the first point where I was like, okay, like I know that I'm intentionally trying to stay comfortable and I'm intentionally avoiding this pain and kind of trying to not escalate. I know it's only going to get worse and I know it's only going to get harder and more painful, but I was really trying every which way to avoid it. And that was kind of the first time that I realized that.
That apprehension and that not wanting to move forward, like, well, I want to stay comfortable, even though we know we have to go there. Lots of things are in the background of that, right? Comfort is where I'm safe. If I move forward, it's more intense. And what if all the unknowns can happen, right? And I remember doing that exactly the same thing in my labor. The midwife finally had to just say, get up, because I was like, no, I'm good. I'm just going to putz about here because this is good for me. But the subconscious thing for me was about my miscarriages. My babies were always safe on the inside, but once they came out, they were not. And so I'm sure that's what was going on in the back of my head. But at the same time, if it's a metaphor for life, we're content to stay in the comfort. And the push to move through that, no one's going to intentionally choose it. I think sometimes now I do because I'm more comfortable with the uncomfortable. But yeah, you can literally stall your labor out. Your pre-stuff that you wrote to me, it's a mind game. That should be our tattoo. Labor is the biggest mind game of them all. Am I going to get through this or am I not?
It is. It's such a mind game. And it's one that I think I thought I was so prepared for it. And I think I was prepared for it. But it's also labor is just something that you don't know it till you're in it. And I think I was there and I was like, oh, this hurts and this is uncomfortable and this is hard. And I was really looking for every which way out of it.
Can we just rewind back 9 months so I can change my mind? Because I don't want this part.
I was like, this is hard. And I knew that it was part of the process. This is the process and this is the big moment. So yeah, after all of that and just laboring in and out of the tub, on the toilet, all those things, we had a discussion with the midwives about breaking my water.
I would also clarify the timeline just so that it's not like it didn't jump that. It was, we called the other midwife at 6:30. We got out of the tub at 10:30. She went back into the tub at about noon and then stayed in the tub until about 4. At about 4 was when we had the conversation of, hey, water hasn't broken yet. And they're like, maybe in another hour we should talk about breaking the water. And I was like, this has been going on for a very long time and she's very tired. Is there any reason you should wait? She goes, no. I'm like, okay, let's not wait.
I'll make the decision.
Well, when they're like, go talk to her about it. And in between the contractions, it's like, hey, you're already pretty toast and you want to break? Yes. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, it was definitely, that was like the first point in the labor where I had to kind of make a decision. And I felt like I just wasn't going to progress anymore without doing that. And so they broke my water. I didn't really feel too much from that. I think I was just in the thick of the contractions and whatnot. And shortly after the water broke, I did start feeling the urge to push. And so I got really excited with that. I was like, cool, this is it. You know, I've heard from so many people that, oh, I pushed for 20 minutes and then I had a baby, or I've, all these things. And so I was like, cool, this is it.
This baby's going to just flop right out of my big cavernous vagina and I'm done. Yeah.
It was not what happened. So
I think I quite literally said, all right, baby, it's game time. Let's go.
Yeah. And it was game time, but we were a ways away. It was a long game.
That was 4 when that happened.
Yeah, 4:00, and he was here at 8. So I was pushing for 4 hours. That was a long time. Towards the end of those 4 hours was kind of when the midwives came and had another conversation, and they were like, you've been laboring for a long time. You've been here for 24 hours. Like, let's talk about a possible hospital transfer. They had checked me a couple times while I was pushing. Really wasn't making any progress. They're like, we can feel his head, but like, he's not moving.
And there's your biggest fear realized, right? Your biggest fear of, I don't want a hospital transfer.
Yes.
It's in my face now. Ugh. Ooh, that's the hardest one. And my midwife said the same thing to me too.
Yep.
If you don't push this baby out, I'm going to transfer you.
Yeah. And that's where I was like, okay. They were kind of like, we'll give it another hour or so, but like, it is on the table. Like, we do need to talk about the fact that this could be happening soon.
They said there were 4 steps. It was herbs that would speed up the contractions. Then
which we did.
We need the toilet birthing position.
Toilet laboring.
And then it was going to be sideline release and then guided pushing, and then they had to go to the hospital. We were on the way to sideline release.
They told me, they were like, let's do the side lying release. And I was in the tub, relaxing, having the time of my life in the tub. And then they were like,
Wonder why the baby wasn't coming out.
yeah. And then they were like, all right, this may be a 10-15 foot walk. And I was like, okay. In my head, I was like, there's nothing I would rather do less than lay on my side in labor right now. And Kyle and I laugh about this because getting out of the tub, all I could think was like, the only way out is through. And I was like, God, I just wonder why like I was thinking that. And Kyle's like, because I kept saying it. And I was like, oh, I was like, well, that's why. But
She's like, it's coming from the ethers. The gods are speaking to me. Kyle's like, yeah, I am. Let's do this.
Yeah, it was just Kyle.
Let's wrap this up, baby.
So I got out of the tub. Kyle helped me, and we walked over to the bed, and we were next to the bed. And I felt like I had to push again. And so standing, what Kyle and I had been doing was I would kind of put my arms around his neck, and he would squat with me to support me in that squat so that I could hold myself there. And that was a really comfortable laboring position for me. And squatted down, pushed a couple of times, and my midwife was standing off to the side. And as midwives do, she's like down on the ground looking up. She's got good angle going, and she got really excited. And she was like, "Oh my God!"
A little aside, Casey kept choosing the most clear angle she could throughout the entire day. Becca would be like on all fours, face out, and Casey would sit down, do whatever else. She wasn't exactly doing anything, right directly in line. So she would just basically, it's like, look up, check. And I was like, okay. And Casey, the entire day, stone cold, like her face just nothing. And so she's bending over and checking, and then she, for those that can see, this is what she came up like. You're doing great. Becca, feel down. He just reach down. You can feel him. And I look and I see a fuzzy little head, and Becca's like, okay. But it was funny because the rest of the day Casey was like this, and then she was like,
she got really excited. Yeah, she was getting really excited, and I was like, okay, that just felt like super encouraging. And so she's like, don't move. She's like, stay here, keep pushing. And I was like, okay. And so next kind of set of pushes came and did that, and his head came out pretty shortly after that. And that ring of fire is no joke, that's for sure. But I'm grateful that mine was quick. It was only a minute or so, and then his head was out.
Because it's the only way through is through.
Yeah. And then he just came right out super quick, and it kind of shocked me how quickly everything happened at that point compared to how long the labor had been. But I think I was in some form of shock because there is a video of my actual birth, which I was really excited about, but they brought him to my chest, and I was just kind of like shocked, and they had to help me sit back, and they talk about that pause that kind of happens afterward. And that was definitely it. I was definitely in a slight amount of shock there. Yeah, so that was birth itself. They put him on my chest, and I was super excited, and very quickly they took him off of my chest. I didn't really hear what had happened at that point, but I noticed that he was kind of nodding in and out, and he was pretty lifeless looking. The midwives took him and started doing looked like chest compressions, wasn't CPR, but they were just kind of doing some work on him. And I don't remember this
because you're in the euphoria of all the chemicals, right? The hormones.
She was on the moon. But yeah, he came out and he was purple, and then brought him to the chest, and he was there, and then he was out. And we were rubbing his foot pretty hard, and he came back for a second and then went right back out, and then he stayed out. So that was when we took him. I didn't expect the second time I was going to touch my son after catching him was going to be doing sternum rubs. I'm eternally grateful for the preparedness of our midwife team. They had all the stuff, the stuff right there, pulled the respirators out and started doing life-saving breaths. And all of the while, his heart tones were perfect. Up until his head was out, they got the heart tones, they were perfect. And so being law enforcement, we had to go through CPR classes. And that looked like CPR, which means that his heart had stopped. Up until that point, I was great. That was when I kind of just like lost it because I thought that we were going to lose him. But his heart had never stopped. what had happened was that the meconium had been in the sac for so long that it had stained the umbilical cord and the placenta. So he had meconium in his lungs, and what they were doing was just trying to expand his lungs so that way he could breathe under his own power. And that was
that
about
stuff is sticky.
yes, it is. That was about a total of 4 minutes that he was out from that. So they went from one device, they switched to the second one and put him on the platform where it would hold his head. I don't remember what it's called. And then they said, let's call 911. And that was where I was like, something's horribly wrong. And I started angry crying and trying to hide my face from her because she was still euphoric and they're telling her to talk to him. And like, I was aware of what was happening, but that was kind of where things went sideways. And then he started breathing, started coughing. This is where when I get stressed, I get nauseous really easily. And so they're like, you need to suck the stuff out of his nose or his mouth. And we had already put him back on her chest at that point. And thank God it was her, because I was sitting over there going,
like, I'm trying to recover. My baby is recovered. She doesn't know what happened yet. And you were watching it all from a dad's perspective.
Yep. So that was interesting. And I'm grateful for being with the midwives because we didn't get snatched from us. We were 5 minutes from a hospital. And I mean, they couldn't necessarily have done anything different at the hospital other than like, it would have just been chest compressions, but his heart had never stopped. The thing that I'm grateful for, though, is what they had explained afterwards, that the common practice, if the baby is under respiratory distress in a hospital, is they will unguided send a probe down into their lungs, which can cause lifelong damage or death if done improperly. And so it's an outdated practice that doesn't have a lot of information for why they do it that way still. So I'm very grateful for that, but that was definitely fucking scary.
And home birth midwives take neonatal resuscitation and become experts at it because they need to, right? I mean, they don't use it very often, but they've got those skills where, it is the most up-to-date information on how to help babies transition back.
Yeah. And our team was super, like, what I do remember from all of that is they were just very cool, calm, and collected. And they were going through the process. And even when they like called out to call 911, it wasn't this like, oh my God, we're panicking. It was just like call 911 like that. And I just had a lot of faith and trust in the team that we had. And I still do. Like they were amazing.
And I'm glad you said that because I have been where there have been home birth emergencies and hospital emergencies, and the different level of energy in the room, in my experience, and this, you might not have had this experience, but the hospital goes 0 to 90 and it is just like you see in TV, right? Very loud and whatever. Actually, there's one doctor I've seen it where it's not like that. And then at a home birth, it's da-da-da-da-da-da. Like it is so steady and we keep mom and dad calm. We do what we need to do. It's just a different experience. And I think that's because there's so much trust built into, we do what we do. We call in the experts when we need them, but we keep everything steady because there's a bigger picture here. And that is how we transition better through those kind of emergent moments.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it would have been a lot. It was traumatizing, but I think it would have been like really traumatizing had it been in a different setting. And so I'm grateful that it was what it was. It wasn't anything more severe. And we have the team that we did to handle it. Yeah.
So if we're going back to, what do you think the theme of your pregnancy, labor, birth was? What pin would you drop in there?
I can't remember what I said in the initial thing, but I think ultimately going from pregnancy to now, it's really just been this embracing change as it comes and kind of almost like rolling with the punches in a way of, you can plan for everything, every which way. And I'm a planner. And I think a lot of people who take a holistic approach to birth or anything like that, I think they're planners. They have an idea of how they want things to go. And I did. And I have read all the books and thought I did all the right things and thought I knew exactly how, my pregnancy and my labor and my postpartum were going to go. I had it all to a T. And a lot of it went as planned. But then there was a good chunk of it, pretty much everything after the birth that was like, oh, I did not plan for or expect any of this to happen. And then it just, everything like that happened. And so that's kind of been a big theme for me is some of these changes I can't resist. So I think the biggest one, after my son was born, we found out that I could not produce enough milk. And I just thought, oh, I'm just going to breastfeed and this is all going to be super easy and there's going to be no issues. Of course, like this is what's going to happen. And that was not the case. And so that was a really big one for me to have to give up that idea that I was going to exclusively breastfeed. And I had to do it quickly because my son had to eat. So I couldn't just keep holding on to this. Maybe my milk will come in or whatever. Like we had to move on that decision. And so that was hard and that took a lot.
Plus, he had a tongue tie.
Yes. And the tongue tie. And that was one that, like, I remember reading the Womanly Art of Breastfeeding and being like, I literally skipping the part about tongue ties because I was like, oh, that's whatever. That's irrelevant. And then I was like,
Not
wow,
going to happen to me.
showed me. But so, yeah, all of the things, having to just kind of roll with all of that and adapt to it and figure out what was next was hard. That was definitely like a hard thing we have to stomach and move forward from, but just making the decisions that are best for him and being okay with that. So I think just a lot of that, embracing the things that I can't control and being able to pivot some of those plans.
And I mean, that's parenting, right? You're going to find out over the next 50 years that even when you want to just go to the movies, that's the day that he's going to throw up with the flu and poop everywhere and puke everywhere. And you're like, and then the dog's going to get sick because they ate chocolate. Like there's always something that undoes those plans because change is the only thing that's constant and it's always uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I almost wish we had more of those experiences growing up because we are the comfort generation, right? Our parents tried to make everything perfect so that we didn't feel whatever they felt maybe, or their grandparents felt, I don't know, but we are so used to comfort that we don't even know how to bend and flow with the stuff that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think I spent a long time traveling and living very minimally and living in an uncomfortable way, but even that was controlled discomfort. Like I was kind of putting those limits on like how uncomfortable do I want to be or like how, that kind of thing. And so this has definitely been the first like, oh, you have no control over any of this. So it's been an interesting lesson and it's kind of just been one thing after another, but it's been really neat. Now we're 9 weeks postpartum, like seeing all these challenges that happen, his digestive stuff, his tongue tie, his feeding, all these things. We've had to make these changes that deviated from our original plan, air quotes. And now he's just this super happy, healthy baby. And it's like, okay, that's okay. Those changes were okay and everything's okay. So it's been neat to kind of get to that point in this small section of parenting.
Because we can go from it has to be this way and perfect to plans have changed and it's still okay and perfect. Like it's not what I thought, but there's always a way through it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, Kaitlyn, being she was my technically postpartum doula, but she is just also a good friend and everything. And she's just been really, really wonderful and kind of that support and helping me through. She just has such a great perspective and she's so wonderful at helping you to shift your perspective. So she has been a great help in that too, where I'm overwhelmed by a decision and she's able to just really help that perspective. So definitely grateful for all the support that we've had on all ends. I mean, we had regular doula, postpartum doula, midwives, lactation consultants, all sorts of just really good people in our corner. So I think having that support is really important.
I feel like you guys, because you worked on your communication, because you already well aware, you've had therapy, so you already had that kind of perspective. When changes come up, it's much easier to adapt and roll with them when you're both like, ooh, unexpected, instead of why can't you fix this? Right? Because you're in it together. Yeah. How's that been for you, Kyle?
Even before he got here, we were looking at our life and the place that I was stationed at, the things that had happened while we were there, the losses that we'd experienced, both like the baby and then we had a friend, very close friend that took his own life while we were there. And the damage that caused to us and to me personally and her personally, this individual and then joint side of it is that was teaching us something. And then we got to where we were when we found out that he was coming. We were leaving for Colorado, and she went into the bathroom, came back out, put a positive pregnancy test in my face after we were having the whole I'm trying to get out of the door and be miscommunicated about something. So she kind of storms off into the bathroom, comes back out, puts that in my face. I'm like, oh my God. So then we get on an airplane, don't really have an opportunity to talk about it for the next 4 days. And then it was like all of a sudden it was starting to make sense why life was happening the way that it happened. We started making these decisions that were going to be better for us to where we ended up where we are right now, where like most people would say, you left your career, moved across the country, and did all of these things all with a newborn. For what reason? It's like, well, it's because we learned. And then even when we got here, it was kind of the same thing of like life kept being hard. And it was easier to know that it was teaching us something that we're going to be better prepared for in the future, having experienced it now when we had the support that we needed. We might not in the future, and we have a lot of support now, and we learned lessons about who and what we can depend on and where we should go. But for me, I learned just confidence in her. And it's all about shit gets hard, it gets really hard, but it's for something. It's the discomfort was for him that she went through. All of the scary things that happened when he was there, it's like I'm not going to make the mistake of being ill-informed the next time. That's why I looked up the statistics that I was talking about in the other episode. And, well, I did make the good decision. I did make the correct decision, because if that had happened in the hospital, it might not have turned out the same way, and it would have been way more traumatizing for us just getting our baby snatched out of their hands. If worst case scenario, that's what happened.
You know, Kyle, they told me that too about my daughter, that if I'd had her in the hospital, she wouldn't have made it. They're like, what the midwives did was give you skin to skin for 4 hours, and they kept her going. And that's what woke up her hindbrain to keep her alive. If you had been in the hospital, we would have taken her from you. She would have been in the NICU. She would have passed probably before we even got to the NICU.
Jesus. Awful.
You know, we never know. That's why I don't believe in coincidences. That's why I don't believe we're led to random things. Like if things start clicking, pay attention, because if they're clicking in a certain way, even when it's like totally not your plan, be aware that there's something bigger going on where you can even look at them as lessons. And this is going to be for my future good, for my family, for me, for whatever, even though right now, holy crap, what's happening? And, you know, hindsight's 2020, but if we trust that the path we're on is always going to be the path we're supposed to be on, we're never going to miss something that's meant for us. It makes life a whole bunch easier than trying to fit it into our ideal.
I started saying this to her, it's like we're exactly where we're supposed to be. And then I had said it the other episode too, is that we are making the best decision we can with what information we have. And it's the best we can do.
It's all worth it. I mean, it's the coolest thing, like being a mom and getting to do this with Kyle. And I didn't really mention it much at all during the episode, but like having Kyle as a support. And it was just amazing throughout pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. The way Kyle has shown up postpartum has been, I knew he was going to show up and be there, but the way that he did, I had no idea that it was going to be this amazing and this helpful. And he really dropped everything to be there with us every minute of every day for the first, I mean, up until now, really, but the first 3 weeks, especially when it was just the hardest, and being able to have him there. And he probably did more with Grayson than I did those first few weeks when I was recovering. And I just can't imagine having done it without him. So he has just been a huge part. And he was everything in the birth and all that. And I know a lot of that is that he learned in the class. And a lot of that is just who he is as a person. And those two things combined really just, it's been a tremendous support and huge help. So I really can't imagine doing it without him.
Yeah, we kind of got the idea that he's a pretty active dad.
He is. That he is. Yeah. And I am grateful. Yeah.
Well, and what advice would you guys give new parents, whether that's pre-pregnancy planning or postpartum? What advice would you give them?
I think for me, it would be building a team or a community in any way that you can. I know that not everyone has the privilege to go through this with a partner or anything like that, but whatever way that looks like, having more support than you think that you need, having more people in your corner than you think that you need, it's really helpful. And whether that's other moms or it's family or it's friends, whatever, if it's people in the birth workspace, whatever that looks like, I think it's just so important to have that. I can't stress the importance enough of a doula. Having a chiropractor who was able to see me during pregnancy, but then also see my son and myself postpartum was huge. Grayson got his first adjustment at 1 day old. We had an amazing chiropractor, Hannah Grobin in Reno, and she was amazing. She saw him at 1 day. It helped a lot with some of his feeding stuff and tension and all of that. So just having a team, and I think having, like I said, more of a team than you think, and having people who have resources. My midwives had great resources when the tongue tie, lactation, all of that. But just doing that, kind of building that team beforehand, and just having people that have referrals and have resources and just support. Kaitlyn, my postpartum doula, she made me 6 weeks worth of frozen meals and drove from San Diego to Fallon, Nevada. It's 8 hours to bring me that while she's pregnant herself. She was 20 weeks pregnant at the time. So, I mean, and Kaitlyn's a different breed. She is something special, but I highly, highly recommend her for postpartum support. She's just incredible. So yeah, I mean, I just having that team was just really a game changer. I can't imagine having done any of this without that.
And I think that's the postpartum team is the most neglected thing. We haven't taken a breastfeeding class for one. We don't have the right breastfeeding support group that we will really fit in with. We don't have the lactation consultant's number on our fridge when we need it. And yeah, build your postpartum stuff starting early, because you can find your tribe if you start early enough.
Definitely. That's my advice. And just being okay with rolling with the punches, because it's all different than you think. That's okay.
What about you, Kyle?
Be humble, money comes back, and stay off of Instagram.
Oh, I love it. That's perfect. Be humble, money comes back, and stay off Instagram. You'll probably even save more money if you stay off Instagram. Those two things can go hand in hand.
We were on our soapbox on, where for me it was, it's so stupid. What is everybody complaining about? Like, just sleep when the baby sleeps. Come to find out, I can't sleep if the sun's out when there's stuff to be done. And
no, you just can't sleep if the sun's out. No matter if there's stuff to be done.
Yeah, I'd have to hit like a certain degree of like sleep deprivation, and we had auditory hallucinations. She was having visual hallucinations, like the blanket was talking to her.
Oh yeah.
I could be a mile and a half away from the house.
It is a real thing.
That was tough.
But I mean, I think for her too, like up on her soapbox about breastfeeding and this, that, and the other, and it just didn't work for us. The things that we were like, that's easy. It's just, come on. And it's part of that goes into stay off Instagram. It's like, you think you have a fucking clue and you don't. And all of the things that you are certain of, you're not. It's not going to go that way. And even if it does briefly, it's going to change.
It changes. Oh, yes.
When I moved from Nevada to here in Florida, and she had the baby, in a week, all of the things that I could do for him to comfort him no longer work. Like, we understand that now, and it's 2 months in at this point. It's like, all right, I've gotten the concept of this stuff changes like that.
So
Let's be
fast.
humble. So fast. Then,
yeah.
What was the second one?
Stay up Instagram.
Money comes back. Spend the money on the birthing class. Spend the money on the doula. Spend the money on the midwife team. Because when you take any of those three components out for this would have been a very different experience for us. And I can afford to live and feed them, so doing good. Money's going to come back. I wish we would have spent more money. We should have gotten a lactation consultant earlier. We should have spoken with them beforehand. And those are lessons for next time. But I know that going under that is money's going to come back. And then the last one, to stay off Instagram, is that there's this really weird toxic culture of people are almost neglectful of, like, some people just can't do certain things. Like, our son was colicky. We had a tongue tie and a lip tie, and she has breast hyperplasia. And it's like, fuck you for getting up on your high horse saying that if you can't do that, then you're neglecting your child. It's like, we're all under the same community. We're all trying to do right by our children. And some people, it's like, don't get caught up in it. It's not worth it. Yeah, it's great to have an idea of how this is going to go, but the person that you need to care most about is probably sitting next to you. And then when he gets there, it's just the three of you. My cousin said after he got here, he's like, how are you doing? It's like, I'm doing good. And he's like, things got a little complicated. I'm like, nope, super simple now. And he goes, what? It's like, it's just the three of us. It's all that matters. It's me, her, and him. She's got needs that I need to work on. I've got things that she needs to work on, and we're both here trying to do our best by him, and that's all that it is.
It's simplified your life.
Oh, yeah. Every time we both download Instagram again, we're like, we need to be doing things different, and then we get lost in something, and we're like, that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely amazing advice, because we do get caught up in the social stuff, and it's unnecessary, because it is about the three people in the room and how are we going to connect and move forward together. You guys, thank you so much for sharing your story. And Kyle, thank you for coming back from last week's episode. And is there anything that we didn't touch on that you guys want to cover before we say goodbye?
Sign up for care class. Just do it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, sign up for my class. That's good. I like that. It's a great ending.
Highly recommend. Yeah, no, that's been amazing. And I am very fortunate that was virtual and we were able to do it while not living in San Diego. And I think everything is super relevant to us, even being not in that area. So I definitely highly recommend it. I recommend it to everyone I talk to who's having a baby. I just think it's so important for a person having the baby and for a husband. I think it's just really, really important. So yeah.
I appreciate that. Everybody just get into a birth class, please.
Yep.
That is the key to starting all of this. All right. Well, thanks, you guys. I so appreciate it. And you better keep in contact with those pictures because he's yummy. Oh, yeah. That's the word of the day.
Absolutely.
Yummy. All right. Thanks, you guys. And we'll see everybody next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.